Back in the kitchen, Lao Tong took out a case of cabbage and put them on the floor next to a stainless steel work table and signaled the new guy to come over. Lao Tong said, "We're getting low on egg rolls. Take these cabbage and put them in the shredder and make sure the cabbage does not overflow the colander below. Let me know when you are done. I will show you how to boil it." Lao Tong felt good directing him. He felt as if he was the boss now that Yuan was away. Mrs. Li had pulled Lao Tong aside during the anniversary party and informed him that despite the owner's wife, he was the one in charge of the business while her son was gone. "Lao Tong, you took good care of my son's restaurant. You're very important here at Moon Palace. Please don't forget that. I know it's going to be hard on you. We really appreciate your help." Lao Tong was delighted for being praised by the owner's mother. He replied, No, Mrs. Li, it's my duty to help out. Don't worry. I will make sure of everything. You just go ahead and have a great time." While he was wondering if his bonus would get bigger this year, he noticed Wei Long was staring instead of working the shredder. "What's the matter?" he scoffed at him. "You never used the shredder before?" Wei Long shook his head. "Still think about that bonus," Lao Tong sighed and said. "Just cut the cabbage into a wedge small enough to fit in that opening." He pointed at the top of the shredder with a knob sticking out. "Then lift up that tube and use it to press the cabbage in. Now, don't press it too hard or the blade will stop rotating." Wei Long nodded and began to cut the cabbage and put them in the machine just as Lao Tong directed. Moon Palace's neon open sign was lit at exactly 11 o'clock. There was the sound of glasses clinking as Jose put the water glasses on top of the shelf of a waitress station adjacent to the kitchen door. Shuming and Peng circulated the dining room to make sure the floor, the seat, and the tables were clean. They also made sure the placemats were set and condiments were filled and wiped clean. A few minutes after the restaurant was open, several people came in. They were a family of 4, an old couple and a middle-aged couple. They dressed in formal outfits. Mei greeted them with familiarity. "Hello, Mrs. Cooper and Mr. Cooper. It's nice to see you again. How's church?" "The church went fine. We had a good sermon today," Mrs. Cooper replied, and looked at the middle-aged couple. "Mei, I want you to meet my son and his wife. They came all the way from Ohio to visit us." Mei greeted them, and they smiled back in return. Mei grabbed 4 menus from the register counter and led them to a booth by a window. She handed the menu to them and said, "Please enjoy your meal." "Oh, we will," the old lady replied, while the rest of them already studying the menu. Moments later, a few more people came in, and within an hour, the restaurant was packed. Mei was used to Moon Palace being crowded with customers, but today the crowd made her nervous. She was worried what Lao Tong would do if the customers' orders began to pile up. She tried not to think about it. Instead, she tried to stay focused on making sure the customers were taken care of and making sure that Peng and Shuming were doing their jobs. As the lunchtime was ending, Mei was relieved. There was no outbursts in the kitchen. There were only sounds of cooking and occasional demanding voice from Lao Tong. "Hey, bring me some more vegetables, and don't forget to stir that rice." By 2 in the afternoon, the business slowed down, and Mei felt she could breathe again. While she was helping the waitstaff cleaning up the table, she was glad that the kitchen went smoothly. Was it possible that this young man could actually be helpful to him? Mei became curious, but she did not want to know the details, at least not right away. Half an hour later, the staff lunches were served. All sat down and ate except Lao Tong and Wei Long. "Where are they?" Shuming asked without waiting for an answer. She immediately got up and went into the kitchen. Moments later, she came back and muttered, "They're outside smoking." The new guy must be helpful, Peng said, while holding a bowl of rice and shoving food into her mouth. Apparently Lao Tang did not throw any fit, Shuming sarcastically said. I thought he was going to yell and walked out. Shuming gave Mei Ling a spiteful grin. Right, Mei Ling? Mei Ling did not reply. She kept her head down and finished her lunch. Mei Ling felt it was not a good idea for an employee to make a comment about another employee. As for Shuming, she did not really care what Lao Tang would do. She just wanted the new guy to eat with them so she could talk to him and get to know him. Shuming kept looking at the kitchen door, hoping he would enter at any moment. She thought about earlier where she tried to be in the kitchen as much as she could to watch him. She saw him tucking his wavy and somewhat uncontrollable hair into his cardboard cap and caught a few whiffs of his scent as he passed by her. She liked his scent, sweat with a bit of musk. She could no longer contain herself. She must have a chat with him before they start working again. By the time she finished her lunch, she made a comment. What is Lao Tang doing with the new employee that he won't let him eat his lunch? As if she was upset that Wei Lao was being mistreated. She got up, took her chopsticks and rice bowl, and went into the kitchen. Mei Ling was the last one to leave the table. She took the rest of the dishes into the kitchen for Jose to wash. As she stood by the sink, she overheard Shuming giggling. She looked through the screen door and saw Shuming standing in front of Wei Long, who was leaning against the wall with his arms folded, smiling at her while she was chatting and gesturing with her hands. Mei Ling was amused and maybe a little bit envious by what she saw. But suddenly he turned his head and looked straight at Mei Ling. She blushed and rushed into her office. Business was slow in the evening, which was normal for a typical Sunday, especially by 9 o'clock. It was around this time that Yuan would grab a notepad and start to go over the inventory, and Lao Tang Jose would clean the kitchen. But tonight, the next few Sunday nights, Lao Tang would be checking inventory while Wei Long would take over his cleaning task. By 10, the open neon sign was turned off, and the staff was getting ready to go home. Lao Tang informed the new guy that he was to come back tomorrow. Even though Monday is our day off, Lao Tang said, you and I are going to be here so I can teach you a few more things. Hopefully you are a quick learner like you were today. Wei Long nodded. Lao Tang looked at him curiously. You don't like to talk much, do you? Wei Long shrugged. Just as well, it is better to listen than talk. Lao Tang reached for his jacket that was hanging on one of the hooks by the back door. Okay, see you tomorrow at 8, he said, and patted Wei Long's shoulder and left. Gradually, everyone left the place. First it was Lao Tang, then Peng and Shuming, then it was Jose. Wei Long was still wiping the kitchen counter when Mei Ling came out of her office. She watched him for a moment and said, Are you just about done? And feeling a bit odd, for it was just the two of them in the kitchen. Normally, the last ones to leave would be Yuan and her. I think so, Wei Long replied. She pondered whether she should ask him more about his previous work experience. She decided not to. She was pleased how the day turned out. Maybe that was enough for a proof. Maybe that was enough of a proof. She picked out her purse and a pouch full of cash and tucked the pouch underneath her armpit. She waited for Wei Long to put the towels and his apron in the laundry bin before she headed out the back. As soon as she saw him a few steps out of the door, she noticed something and said, Wait. He turned around and looked at her puzzled. She pointed at top of his head and smiled. Wei Long reached over his head and felt the cap and grinned. Thanks, he said, and took off the cap. Mei Ling nodded and was tempted again to ask how he was doing with Lao Tang, but she refrained. She wanted to avoid anything to do with the kitchen as much as possible, less for her to worry about. Instead, she asked something else. How will you get home? I take the bus. Oh, okay. She gave him another smile, See you Tuesday. See you. As Mei-Ling pulled out of the parking lot with her Camaro, she saw Wei Long standing at the bus stop across the street, looking at the ground with an orange light in between his fingers. She felt bad for him standing there in the middle of the night, and was tempted to give him a ride, but at that moment she thought it may not be prudent for her since she just met him. He didn't even fill up an application yet. He was still a stranger. She drove past him without a wave. She felt awkward. And then when she was a few yards away from him, she looked for him in her rearview mirror. Just then, she could have sworn that he looked straight into her eyes. A strange feeling rushed over her.